My name is Ken Washington. I'm a narcissistic abuse educator and narcissistic abuse recovery coach. And my purpose in sharing with you is to shine light into a dark space. Because if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, if you've been in a relationship with a narcissist or been discarded by a narcissist, then that's a dark place to be in. And it can be an isolating place, it can be a lonely place. And so it's good to have some insight into your situation, insight into the dynamics that were in force when you were in that relationship, and some insights into how to move past that, how to heal, how to move on. And so when you look at a narcissist and the nature of a narcissist, how they think, how they operate, a narcissist is someone who can't love you, respect you, be loyal to you, or faithful to you. They just don't have the makeup, the internal makeup to do those things. They're very selfish, they're very self centered, and they don't form mature emotional bonds. They don't feel what you feel, and they don't put themselves on trial. They don't, excuse me, they don't examine themselves to really look internally to see what they're doing wrong and the things that they need to change. They have a conscience, but they've silenced their conscience and they've made a choice to live in a fantasy world instead of looking at reality, instead of looking objectively at their choices and the consequences of their actions and feeling the emotional discomfort that comes as a result of knowing you've done something wrong. That's something that they don't want to do. They don't want to look at that. They don't want to examine themselves. That's why they don't grow. That's why when you look at the lifespan of a narcissist, especially if you've been in a relationship with them for years or even decades, what you'll observe is that basically they're the same person they were emotionally as far as their emotional maturity. They're not really growing that much emotionally because they don't examine themselves. They don't do that internal work necessary to have insights about who they are and make emotional changes and have emotional growth. So this is a person who's not just toxic. It's not somebody who's just got, some issues, who's damaged in some way. This is a person whose fundamental makeup is diametrically opposed to being in a relationship, in a healthy relationship. So if you're in a relationship with someone like that, it can be very confusing because a part of what happens in the dance with the narcissist, in that toxic dynamic, is you start to compensate for their lack. And so if they're not being completely honest, if they're lying by omission, if they're not keeping their word, then in order for you to stay in that relationship with them, you start to justify their behavior, you make excuses for their behavior, you defend their behavior and explain it. And it's through the process of always giving them the benefit of the doubt, even though they're not worthy of that doubt. Even though they are worthy of doubt, you give them the benefit of the doubt. But the thing that happens is you start to believe that they're actually that good person that you're projecting onto them, because by giving them the benefit of the doubt, by filling in the gaps where they lack and they really don't have the substance that they need, you're changing your own belief system about them. You're changing the way that you view them, basically. And you start to believe the lie. You start to gaslight yourself, in a sense, into believing that they're the ideal person that they want you to think they are. And that's where you get stuck in that trap. And initially in the relationship, of course, they idealize you, and in a sense, they parentify you. They make you like you're their parent. And over the course of time, because they are prone to fantasy, they start to slip out of that fantasy. They start to see that you're not perfect, that you have flaws, and that you're not going to just go along with whatever role they relegate you to. It's important to know that they relegate you to a role in their mind, because they can't really deal with you as a person with your own thoughts, with your own feelings, with your own needs. They don't think of you like that. They think of you like someone who's there to serve them. They think of you like an appendage to themselves, like a part of them that's there to serve a function. And basically, the function that you're there to serve is to give them supply, to give them validation, and to give them complete access to your resources. That's how they see you. So when you deviate from the script, when you go off script and you start to criticize them and you start to point out things that they're doing wrong, and you start to hold them accountable, and maybe you started keeping a journal or keeping notes, and some of you may have even started to record them just to keep your sanity, because there's no truth, there's no substance, there's no meaning, there's no integrity in that relationship dynamic. And because there's no truth or integrity for you to hold on to, the truth often gets lost in those relationships, and you don't know what's real. You don't know which way is up. You're trying to figure out what's going on, especially when they have their confabulations, when they're remembering history wrong, and you're trying to hold them accountable about something, and they use Darvo, they deny, attack, and reverse the role of victim and offender. They make you feel like you're crazy for bringing it up, and that you were the person attacking them, and that they never did anything wrong, and if they did do something wrong, it was only because you deserved it. And by the time they get done with the word salad, you don't know which way is up. And their confabulations, that's where they remember history wrong. And so they are looking at you and telling you what you know happened did not happen, but they're saying it with a straight face and with conviction. And because they seem so sincere and they seem so convinced that those things didn't happen, you start to doubt yourself. You start to question yourself. You start to question whether or not you're losing it, whether or not you're crazy, whether or not you're the narcissist. And so as a result of that, you start to really almost become like an investigator. You start writing things down. You start recording things. You start documenting important events and important conversations. And you feel crazy, because either you're losing your grip on reality and your ability to understand the facts of what's happening in your day-to-day experience with this person. That's one alternative. Or this person is gaslighting you, minimizing your feelings, and projecting all of their behavior on you, and misremembering everything. And either way you look at it, if you love this person, if you've given this person access to your heart and committed yourself to this person, either alternative is not good, because it means that this person who you've devoted yourself to is not who you thought they were. This person is not who you believe them to be. And if you're losing your grip on reality and you're the one who's confused, then that's that's even worse. And so you have these two narratives, these two possible situations that you're facing, and neither one of them is good. And so a lot of people elect to stay in this state of ambivalence about the situation, and it's tempting to just bury your head in the sand and just stay in the narcissist fantasy world and stay in that matrix and pretend like everything is fine and go along to get along. That's until you reach a point where you just can't take it anymore, where the baiting, the dog whistling, the projection, the smear campaigns, the triangulation, all of it just gets to a point where it's too much. And you finally say, okay, enough is enough. And you start fighting back. And when that happens, then they usually turn up the heat with their devaluation stage of the relationship. Remember, you're going to have those three stages: idealization, devaluation, discard. And a lot of times you have a Hoover as a part of their abuse cycle. And when they're in that, they have you in that devaluation stage, that's where the abuse is so intense that it's just chipping away at you. It's chipping away at your self-esteem, your sense of self-worth, your concept of who you are, your understanding of what your purpose is. All of that is being diminished in that process, because you had a vision of the relationship. You had a vision of what you wanted to create with this person. And at a certain point, even when you figure out that, okay, this person is not who I thought they were, there's still that tendency to hold on to the vision of the relationship and the hope that you had for the future of that relationship. And so you fight for that, even though you know that this person is not the person you thought they were. You're still fighting to hold on to it. And you have to ask yourself, that's where you have to really examine yourself and examine your beliefs and really try to understand what's going on inside of you such that you feel the need to hold on to this. And it's incredibly difficult to let go of, because you grapple with the core fears of, will I be able to find someone else? What does it mean? Who am I now that this relationship is ending? And that's because meaning is more important than happiness. People won't always tell you that, but that's the truth. If you have meaning, even in a toxic relationship, you feel like you know who you are. You feel like you know your place in the world. Even though it's a toxic relationship, you have meaning. But once you lose that meaning, then what do you have? It feels like you have nothing. It feels like you're in this oblivion, that you're in this darkness, in this abyss, without an anchor, without anything that grounds you to anything that you want. And so it's incredibly difficult to leave a narcissist. Not just because you lose your meaning, but there are other factors that come into play as well, such as that chemical addiction. When you're in that relationship and they're mistreating you, they're abusing you and doing all the toxic things that they do, your body produces cortisol as a result of that stress that you're going through. And then when they decide that they want to throw you a little breadcrumb, that they want to give you a little bit of attention or affection, and you get that hit of dopamine, and it's the constant oscillation back and forth between cortisol and dopamine, and it's unpredictable. It's consistent in a sense that they're always switching, but it's also unpredictable because you don't know when they're going to treat you well. And because of that, you experience what's called intermittent reinforcement, where you become addicted to that cycle because of the intermittent reinforcement. And you get to a point where you feel like the only person that can make you feel good is the narcissist. So there's several different things that are going on in that toxic dynamic, which makes leaving a narcissist one of the most difficult things that you can ever do. But the key to being able to get your life back and remember who you are and remember what your purpose is and reconnect with your authentic self is educating yourself about the process of being in that relationship, understanding the nature of the narcissist, understanding the nature of what they're doing to you on a psychological level, emotional level, and on a physical level as far as your health is concerned. And to understand the nature of the fantasy world that you are enrolled in, that you're a part of when you're in that dynamic with the narcissist. Once you see it clearly, you have a right view and a right understanding of what's happening. That right view and right understanding gives you the strength to break that trauma bond and to break that addiction and to leave that relationship for good.